Let's be honest, you've likely witnessed it before. A man goes all out for a woman. He's attentive, always replies right away, plans romantic outings, and constantly expresses affection. And yet, she loses interest. On the flip side, there's another man who responds sporadically, keeps some emotional distance, and doesn't actively pursue her, and she can't stop thinking about him. You're left wondering what's going on. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Women are often drawn to men who don't prioritize them above all else. It's not because they want to be mistreated or because something is wrong with them. It's simply that, psychologically, uncertainty and emotional contrast have a strong effect, particularly on women. This isn't about manipulation, it's about recognizing the real triggers behind attraction and obsession in today's dating world. Women are deeply emotional by nature. They form bonds through feelings. When you're too accessible, overly kind, and totally predictable, the emotional spark fades. But when you remain calm, slightly detached, and focused on your own life, she becomes intrigued. Most men have never been shown this dynamic. They've been raised to be courteous, giving, and romantic, and while those traits have value, they don't ignite obsession. That kind of intensity comes from a different equation, one that revolves around emotional tension, perceived value, and self-control. In this video, I'll unpack everything. 7 core truths about why women pursue men who seem indifferent, and how to use that knowledge to turn things around. Let's start with the first. The power of emotional unpredictability. Emotional unpredictability is incredibly potent in keeping a woman emotionally invested. It's that subtle uncertainty, the not knowing exactly where she stands, that keeps her thinking about you. It may sound harsh, but the human brain is drawn to the unknown. We chase what isn't easily accessible. Women, especially, are deeply attuned to their emotions. When your vibe shifts and isn't entirely consistent, it provokes deeper feelings. But when you're constantly present, immediately responsive, and constantly reassuring her, she doesn't have to guess. And that removes the mystery. She doesn't question anything. And that's exactly why she doesn't experience the emotional friction that fuels attraction. That subtle tension is what pulls her in. It's the reason she checks her phone constantly, lies awake thinking about you, and feels invested. The uncertainty around your thoughts, your intentions, and where things stand between you two. That's where the real power lies. Now, this isn't about playing with her emotions or manipulating her. It's about not laying all your cards on the table too soon. When you take your time and are intentional with your responses, she begins to engage emotionally. She starts reading into your messages, bringing you up in conversations with her friends, and trying to earn your attention. This is the point where many men get it wrong. They believe that being reliable and consistent is what women truly want. And while women do say they value consistency, the feelings that drive attraction are often sparked by a sense of mystery and spontaneity. That's why they daydream about emotionally distant or bad boy types. It's not the drama they crave. It's the emotional volatility those dynamics produce, whether they realize it or not. If you're the kind of guy who always replies instantly, drops your plans for her, and never says no, you've taken the thrill out of the connection. You've removed the very tension that fuels desire. The key is to ease up. Allow her to experience uncertainty. Don't over-explain yourself. Don't rush to reassure her. Let the silence speak. One of the most effective tools? Subtle pullbacks. Not disappearing, just shifting your energy. Don't initiate contact for a day. Leave her message on read for a while. Redirect your focus toward your own life and goals. The moment you stop trying to regulate her emotions is the moment she starts adjusting her behavior to keep your attention. That's the shift. That's when the dynamic changes. Women crave emotional intensity. And that intensity is sparked through contrast, moments of closeness followed by distance, warmth followed by space. That's the emotional rhythm that stirs desire. When a woman isn't quite sure where she stands with you, she naturally starts to invest more. She puts in more effort, and you occupy more of her thoughts. In today's dating world, the men who grasp this concept don't chase. They become magnetic. They don't overwhelm her with constant attention. Instead, they create space for her to pursue them. That's what fuels her obsession. The feeling that there's something she hasn't fully figured out, something just out of reach that she wants to secure. Mastering the art of tension is key. Keep a touch of mystery alive. Let her wonder. That's how you stay lodged in her mind. Second principle: scarcity builds value. Consider how scarcity works in everyday life. The rarer something is, the more people desire it. The same rule applies in dating. If she's constantly approached by men who shower her with compliments, blow up her phone, like all her pictures, and constantly seek her attention, none of them feel unique. They blur together. But when one man holds back, maintains a low profile, and doesn't immediately pedestalize her, he stands out. That's the power of scarcity. People are drawn to what's not easily available. When you become selective with your time, energy, and presence, you create a sense of exclusivity. You position yourself as someone of value, someone who can't be accessed by just anyone. That shift forces her to engage more deeply, to step up and meet your standard if she wants to keep your attention. Most men go about it the wrong way. They overwhelm women with attention, assuming that the more they give, the more it will be appreciated. But in reality, when you're always available, you start to lose value in her eyes. She begins to think you have nothing else going on in your life. Slowly, she starts to see herself as above you. And once that power balance shifts, the attraction begins to fade. A woman won't chase a man she doesn't perceive as high value. So, how do you build that sense of value through scarcity? You become deliberate with your time. You don't say yes to every invite. You're thoughtful in your conversations. You don't rush to reply. You live a life that's full without her, one built around your fitness, your career, your passions, your goals. That becomes your priority, and when she finally does get your attention, it feels earned, it feels special. Women don't become fixated on men who are constantly available. They become obsessed with men who feel like a reward, not a given. You don't need to act distant or cold, just grounded and self-sufficient. Show her through your actions that you're not like every other guy scrambling for her approval. You've got your own path, and her access to you is a privilege, not a guarantee. Scarcity does something else too. It triggers imagination. When you're not always present, her mind starts to wander. Where is he? What's he doing? Why hasn't he replied yet? That curiosity drives emotional involvement, and the more she's emotionally involved, the more she starts chasing. Obsession grows through careful balance, small intentional doses of attention paired with a strong undercurrent of mystery. Another key point: don't overshare. When a man reveals too much too quickly, he kills intrigue. Let her discover who you are gradually. Let the story unfold over time. Be the kind of man she can't fully figure out after one date or a few messages. That sense of mystery is what keeps her curious, keeps her coming back. In a world where women can connect with dozens of men in seconds through their phones, the only way to truly stand out is to break the pattern. Be less accessible. Be more elusive. Be rare. You're not being cold. You're simply intentional. You're not dismissive. You're just focused on what matters to you. And in doing so, you elevate your value without needing to explain it. Scarcity doesn't push women away. It pulls them in. The more challenging something is to attain, the more her mind tells her it must be worth it. Third principle: rejection fuels desire. Here's a truth few are willing to admit. Rejection, or even the subtle possibility of it, sparks a powerful emotional reaction in women. It taps into something instinctive. The moment she senses that you might not need her, or worse, that you're fully capable of walking away, something shifts. She begins to pursue you more actively, not because she's desperate or insecure, but because people are naturally drawn to what they feel slipping away. In modern dating, most men are too cautious. They walk on eggshells, afraid to upset her, afraid to say the wrong thing, afraid to lose her. But that fear strips them of presence and power. What truly captivates a woman is a man who stands firm, who calmly says, "If this doesn't feel right, I'm out." That quiet confidence rewrites the whole interaction. You don't need to raise your voice or play games. You just need to mean what you say. A man who isn't afraid to reject what doesn't align with his standards commands respect. And when she feels like she might lose you, everything changes. That's when the questions start creeping in. What if he loses interest? What if he walks away? What if another woman gets his attention? Those thoughts create a sense of urgency and emotional vulnerability. And in human psychology, few things are more motivating than the fear of loss. When a woman experiences even a subtle form of rejection, her ego takes a hit. And depending on your energy and how you carry yourself, that moment can either push her away or push her to try harder. When you handle things with composure, quiet confidence and restraint, most women respond with even more effort. They start showing up differently, dressing better, reaching out more often, trying harder, because now there's something at stake. They feel the need to prove their worth. This is exactly why women are drawn to the man who didn't worship them, who didn't laugh at every joke, who didn't shower them with compliments every 5 minutes or constantly seek their validation. He stood apart. He triggered self-reflection in her, even just for a moment, and that moment of doubt sparked emotional investment. You don't have to say much to create that effect. Sometimes all it takes is a glance, a delayed reply, or simply choosing not to chase after a disagreement. You don't rush in to make everything right. Those subtle signals speak volumes. They communicate, "I like you, but I don't need you." And that is one of the most powerful positions a man can be in. Here's something else most men miss. The majority of women are used to being pursued. That's their default experience. So when a man breaks that pattern, when he doesn't immediately chase, doesn't rush to impress, doesn't try to win her over, she notices. Suddenly she's curious, and soon after, she's hooked. Not because of anything specific he said, but because of how he made her feel, off balance, unsure, intrigued. You don't need to be a master manipulator. You just need to have the strength to walk away from anything that doesn't align with your standards. That silent shift, the moment she senses your presence pulling away, speaks louder than any compliment or expensive gift ever could. One thing to always remember, chasing does not create desire. It dissolves it. It's space that builds desire. It's resistance that creates tension. When used with intention, even rejection can completely shift the dynamic. Suddenly, you're no longer the one chasing. The balance of power changes. Why? Because true indifference is magnetic. A man who carries himself with calm detachment naturally holds the upper hand. Not because he's playing games, but because he's unshakable. Nothing and no one disrupts his center. That's what draws women in. Not coldness, but a grounded, silent confidence that communicates, "I'm whole with or without you." That kind of energy is rare. And it's irresistible. When you're truly indifferent, you stop reacting emotionally. If she takes hours to reply, it doesn't faze you. If she cancels plans, you don't chase after her. If she creates emotional distance, you allow it. Why? Because you're anchored in who you are. You're not reliant on her attention, her company, or her approval to feel complete. This is where most men misstep. They mistake attention for connection, so the moment a woman starts to withdraw, they spiral into fear and begin to overcompensate. They start over-explaining, they send follow-up texts, they rush to fix something that was never broken in the first place, and in doing so, they lose her, not because of their words, but because of what their actions communicate. "I need you too much." True indifference sends the opposite message. It says, "You're not the center of my world." And when a woman senses that, it hits her ego in a subtle but powerful way. She begins to wonder, why doesn't he seem affected? Does he even like me? What's going on in his head? That inner questioning is the seed of obsession. Indifference doesn't mean being cold or emotionless. It means being composed. It means not reacting to her emotional shifts, her silence, or her subtle tests. You don't crumble under pressure. You remain steady. And that emotional steadiness becomes something she starts craving because it contrasts with her own uncertainty. People are drawn to what destabilizes them emotionally, and she will chase the thing that makes her feel just a little off balance. When you're indifferent, space happens naturally. You don't rush in. You let her sit with her thoughts. She starts thinking about you more than you think about her. And that shift is incredibly powerful. She begins chasing. She starts seeking your validation. She tries to earn your full attention. And something else happens. Your communication changes. You stop over-explaining. You stop justifying every action. You speak less, but your words carry more weight. Why? Because you're no longer seeking her approval. You already approve of yourself. That self-assurance gives your presence depth. It feels stable, rare, and deeply attractive. Here's the real secret. Women respect men who remain indifferent. They might never openly admit it, but they feel it. Deep down, they know most men are emotionally reactive, too eager, too available, too quick to bend. But the man who stays composed in the middle of emotional turbulence, he's unforgettable. She will test you. She'll push your buttons. She'll challenge your boundaries just to see if you'll crack. And when you don't, when you remain calm, focused, and emotionally unfazed, that's when she starts craving your attention like it's air. That's the power of indifference. In a world where emotional noise is constant, social media drama, heated texts, emotional volatility, stillness and control become your greatest assets. When you stay rooted in yourself, when you're busy building your life and stop trying to prove your worth, everything shifts. The moment you stop chasing is the moment she begins to pursue you. Fifth principle, emotional control is everything. If there's one trait that separates the men women forget from the ones they obsess over, it's emotional discipline. Today's world is flooded with emotional chaos, impulsive reactions, constant drama, endless mood swings. But when a man enters that space with steady, grounded energy, he instantly stands out. That kind of inner control is rare, and it captivates women. Why? Because it creates a unique emotional effect. She feels safe around you because you're stable, and at the same time, she's intrigued because she can't quite read you. That unreadability sparks her curiosity. She wants to decode you. She puts more mental energy into you, and that's how obsession starts. Here's the truth. Women will test you, sometimes consciously, often subconsciously. They want to know if you're solid or shaky, and your reaction, or lack of one, tells them everything. She'll press your buttons, spark minor arguments, challenge your beliefs, or toss out provocative comments, all to see if she can influence your emotions. And most men fall right into the trap. They get flustered, defensive, try to over-explain, or even worse, scramble to smooth things over just to maintain peace. That's weak energy. The man who stands out is the one who remains calm, the one who doesn't react, who allows her emotional waves to come and go without being swept up in them. He doesn't try to control her storm. He simply refuses to get caught in it. That kind of presence is rare and powerful. In a world full of reactive, unstable men, the one who stands firm becomes the anchor she subconsciously seeks. Women become deeply attracted to men who can weather their intensity, not because those men control them, but because they control themselves. Emotional control silently communicates, "You can bring the fire, but I won't get burned." And that quiet strength hits her at a deeper level. Why? Because it signals something even more important. This man isn't afraid to walk away, and that is the ultimate form of self-control. You don't chase closure. You don't beg for clarity. You don't plead to be understood. You simply step back, calm, composed, and let your silence make the statement. That, more than any words, leaves a lasting impact. It's not about playing games. It's about showing her something she's not used to: stability. Most women are used to emotional drama. They're used to men cracking under pressure, chasing, fixing, apologizing for everything. But when you hold your ground instead, when you don't try to control or fix but simply remain steady, it flips everything. And here's the bonus: emotional control also gives you power in communication. You decide when to engage. You decide when or if to respond. You no longer react impulsively. You move with intent. And that self-governed energy is exactly what sets you apart. You don't fire off a text out of impulse. You don't respond to every change in her tone. Instead, you remain in control of yourself and, by extension, the entire dynamic. This isn't about suppressing your feelings or turning emotionally distant. It's about owning your presence. It's about giving yourself the space to pause, process, and respond with intention. Because the man who governs his emotions ends up commanding the entire room. And trust me, the woman in front of you feels that. Emotional control doesn't just shift your relationships, it transforms your entire life. When you stay calm, centered, and composed, you naturally lead. Sixth principle: the power of pulling back. If you truly want to change the dynamic with a woman, pull back. Not as a punishment, not as some strategic trick, but as a natural, self-respecting response when her energy shifts, when her effort fades, or when she starts subtly testing your value. Most men panic in these moments. They ramp up their effort. They start proving themselves. They lean in harder the moment she leans out, but all that effort backfires because when you try to compensate for her pullback, you dissolve the tension that actually fuels her desire. Want to stand out? Learn to lean back. Pulling back doesn't mean ghosting or being manipulative. It means being aware. It sends a clear message. I feel the shift, and I'm not going to compete for a place in your life. That single decision can change everything. Because when a woman feels your attention, your energy, and your presence start to withdraw, she's forced to confront the absence. The quiet becomes deafening. The space you leave behind starts to bother her. And suddenly, the question surfaces. Where did he go? Why isn't he trying anymore? That space creates gravity. It makes her reflect. And more often than not, it brings her back. Did I do something wrong? That question spinning in her head is exactly where obsession begins. It's the spark that keeps her thinking, wondering, analyzing. And yet, most men sabotage this moment. The instant they sense her pulling away, they chase. They over-explain. They send walls of text, hoping to fix what doesn't need fixing. But all of that communicates one thing. You matter more to me than I matter to myself. It reeks of insecurity, and it kills attraction. But the man who pulls back with quiet confidence sends an entirely different message. I am not dependent on your attention. And that kind of energy, it's powerful, it's uncommon, it makes an impact. Here's what tends to happen when you pull back. She starts remembering the way you made her feel, your energy, the tone of your voice, the way your presence lingered after you left. Not because you said anything, but because you stopped saying everything. And here's the wild part. When you give her space, she often comes back with more intensity. She starts initiating. She brings you up in conversations. She tests the waters with small messages, subtle gestures, because in that silence, she begins to feel your value. She starts to miss your presence, and if you'd been showing up before as a steady, grounded, emotionally composed man, she will feel that absence deeply. Timing is everything. Pull back when she stops appreciating you. Pull back when the effort fades. Pull back when her energy shifts, not as punishment but as protection. For your peace, your standards, your self-respect. Let her feel your absence, truly feel it. Because only when you're no longer constantly present will she begin to recognize the weight of your presence. Don't explain it. Don't announce it. Just shift. Go quiet. Redirect your energy inward, toward your life, your goals, your purpose. That subtle shift will say more than any speech ever could. Pulling back recenters your value. It resets the dynamic. It reminds her that you're not always available, not always waiting around, not endlessly pursuing. And when she starts chasing you again, it's because something clicked. She lost the attention of a man who knows his worth. Seventh principle, scarcity creates value. Nothing fuels desire like realizing you can't have something whenever you want it. Scarcity is a psychological magnet. The less available something is, the more we fixate on it. And dating is no exception. This is why women get hooked on the men who aren't constantly around, who don't reply the second a message is sent, who don't appear at every invitation, who aren't on demand. When your energy is always accessible, it loses its impact. You need to stop giving yourself away so easily. In today's dating world, being overly available is a mistake. Constant messaging, back-to-back plans, non-stop communication, it kills the tension, it erases the intrigue, and most importantly, it makes you predictable. And nothing predictable ever gets chased. Men who are always there, instantly replying, reshaping their schedule to fit hers, constantly checking in, blend into the background. They become noise. But the man who gives space, who lets her wonder, who focuses on his own path, he becomes unforgettable. But the man who shows up with purpose, fully present, intentional, and then retreats into his own world, that man leaves a lasting mark. That man becomes unforgettable. This doesn't mean you ignore her. It means you don't become overly accessible. You don't show up more than she earns. You don't pour in more than she's willing to give. When you're with her, you're fully engaged. But when you're not, your focus returns to your path, your mission, your growth, your goals. That balance is what makes your presence feel like a gift, not a given. Women are drawn to what they can't easily define. If you're always available, always responding, always showing up, there's no mystery. She knows where you stand. She knows she has you. But when you create space, when you pull back and prioritize yourself, now she has to wonder. Now she starts thinking. Now you're not just another guy sending her messages. You're a man she has to earn. And here's the shift. The moment she starts putting in effort, that's when desire turns to obsession. Because people only truly value what they have to work for. That's not just a dating principle, it's universal. Business, friendships, love, effort deepens attachment. Let her feel that. Build a life so complete, mentally, physically, emotionally, that you're never waiting for her to fill some empty space. That's when your attention becomes a reward. That's when your time becomes a privilege. And that's when you become unforgettable. And women feel that shift. It's subtle, but it's powerful. This is about energy, as much as it is about action. Don't always be the one to reach out first. Give her the space to initiate. Let her sit with uncertainty. Let her wait. And when she does reach out, don't drop everything, don't rush. Respond when it aligns with your flow, when it fits into your rhythm. Keep your world turning whether she's in it or not. That's what creates emotional tension. And it's that very tension that keeps her invested. Scarcity isn't a manipulation tactic. It's self-discipline. It's the understanding that too much of anything loses its value. Apply that to your presence and you become unforgettable. Not because you're withholding, but because she never quite feels like she fully has you. And it's in that space, the gap between what she desires from you and what you deliberately offer, where true desire is born. That's the space where obsession takes root. Give her just enough to stay intrigued, then disappear into your purpose. Let her chase the rest. Because modern dating isn't about pursuit, it's about positioning. Women become obsessed with men who know their worth, men who stay composed under pressure, who pull back when the moment calls for it, and who never make themselves overly available. These men don't chase. They create emotional gravity through mystery, restraint, and scarcity, not through constant words, but through the weight of their presence. If you want her to chase you, stop giving everything up front. Shift your focus inward. Become the man who's just out of reach, the one she can't quite decode, the one she keeps thinking about long after the conversation ends. Because in the end, it's not the loudest man who wins. It's the quiet, composed, rare one. The one who knows his value, holds his ground, and walks away when the energy no longer serves him. That's the man she remembers. That's the man who leaves a mark.